Dave, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Dan. Looking forward to chatting.
Yeah. And we were just talking, and I think this is the type of episode that I really enjoy because it just really opens up all the potential for what you can do with this little engine that you're building of an agency, right? Which can just mean so many things. I think that if for other businesses, like if you're selling tires or like some other product, there's a lot of constraints. I think one thing that's sort of neglected about the agency space is just how many places you can go. So with that, let me give you the floor. I'd love to just learn a little bit about your background and your journey and kind of how you came to where you are now running Morphio.
For sure. Thanks. So my name's Dave. I am the CEO of a marketing technology software called Morphio. Before that, Morphio was within an agency that I was the chief operating officer of, and before that, VP of finance. And Morphio is the story of the engine that propelled our own growth within that agency. I joined that agency about 6 years ago. I came out of public accounting. Don't hold that against me, but like I was, corporate Big Four public accounting, doing tax returns and consulting and all of that stuff. And I was brought into this agency that was sitting at about 20 people, and the owners said, we have ambitious growth plans. We've made a decision. We want to scale this operation, and we know we can't do it without the right systems and processes and financial structures in place. And that was kind of their aha moment after they had doubled their revenue in 1 year, but not added $1 to the bottom line. And they were like, we grew, it's awesome, but we didn't make any more money out of this. And that was sort of their aha moment that they needed somebody with a different background, such as mine, to come in and analyze how do we make this scale and make this sustainable beyond just being, owner operator type agency. And so that's how I got brought into the agency world. I've since learned how interesting marketing numbers are and better than finance numbers. So I joined that agency, and as I said, what we started to realize was just the need for scalable systems, tools, and processes, whether that be manual, the way we work as people, and also the way we use technology. We embarked on building Morphio within the agency, and it was a passion project for a long time. Was a whole story there that we'll get into, but ultimately, spoiler alert, we scaled the agency successfully. We sold it at the start of 2020. Good time to sell. I'm still on as a contractor there with them. And then, now we're focusing on Morphio.
Yeah, that's really great. There's so much to get into there. As an aside, I'm friends with a number of accountants and tax people, and everybody says the same thing. Don't hold it against me. But in my experience, like every accountant I meet is like the most gregarious person. I feel like they're either compensating against the stereotype or the stereotype is just BS to begin with. So it's sort of interesting. It's the opposite of engineers and coders and so on. But we'll get into that. I guess to back up a little bit, what were those, you kind of coming out of consulting backgrounds. What were those first couple of years in the agency like? Like what did you see on the ground, and what sort of started changing your thinking towards building more scalable product or service?
Yeah, great question. What I saw was a team of smart young people that were excited to grow and do more with their time. And what we constantly ran into, and this you hear it from every agency we talk to, we don't have time. You don't have time. And that was the constant refrain for years coming out of our digital marketing team leads, right? Was we know there's opportunity, because we were looking at how do we organically grow clients, right? That's kind of the holy grail of agency sustainability, is bring in a client and grow them, both their business and their results, and improve their bottom line, and in turn improve your bottom line, right? When clients win, agencies win. So the notion was, how do we get people more opportunity to think and analyze and spend more time building relationships and rapport with clients, and not in the platforms every day making micro optimizations. And that was kind of the aha moment when we had one Black Friday, Cyber Monday that kind of broke the team, if you will, where there was late nights and team members, in tears. And it was just one of those grinds of a weekend where everybody's in all day, every day. And seeing the team in that state was the the actual trigger for us to be like, okay, we're burning out our best people, and how do we empower them and help them to help our clients?
Yeah, that's really great. And that was going to be my next question, which you kind of answered, which is basically, was there a moment where you realized you had to shift things? And it sounds like maybe it was Black Friday or Cyber Monday.
The other moment was looking at those financial statements and going, okay, we keep growing, but not at the same rate on the bottom line as the top line. It was also seeing, the number of junior people that we had to hire in to fulfill the work, right? And it was very much this idea of, okay, we've been paid to do paid search, and we have this many hours on this retainer, and okay, we need bodies to do it. And then it was, okay, let's go find the new grads who come out of a marketing program, and have them do it. The training cost and the retention of those people was so challenging, because you'd have people come in and we had to train them from scratch, right? Spend 3-6 months learning the nuances of accounts. What did we do here? How did we change this before? What are the ideas we've already done? And bringing people up to speed was taking so much time that it was such an investment. And then, in 2 years later, they're getting poached, they're getting, taken in-house for more money, and all of the typical, challenges with talent retention. And that was the other aha moment, was when we had some really good talent after a year or two of promising growth, say, oh, well, this in-house marketing team is paying me 20 grand more, and I can't say no to that. So we're going to go. And then we thought, all right, back we go, hire a junior person, go through the training cycle, find the talent that may or may not exist. And that was the other breaking point, was just the amount of lost time in training and onboarding new people.
Right. And it's only gotten worse, and from what I can tell, finding that sort of talent. So that makes a lot of sense. So you guys, basically decide to switch gears. And I think a lot of agencies have tried skunkworks projects, and they often kind of collect dust or end up, on a shelf somewhere. So what did it take to make it work? I guess that's a big question, but what was the starting point? Like, how did you decide to start developing the technology?
Yeah, fascinating question. Because it was one of those projects that had false starts, right? We started building Morphio early 2016. And it took 4 years of internal development, and now a year of being its own business and commercialized. But 4 years of internal product development, false starts along the way. We started by thinking, okay, if we build an independent sort of team and say, these people are going to be the Morphio team, and we stuck them in a bit of a corner and said, this is what we're willing to invest. The cost of these 3 developers and this UI person and a leader, product leader, they're going to go in isolation and just build this thing. The false start we had there, or the traction that was stalled on that type of approach, was they became disconnected from what the pain points of the team were. And so we had this, disconnect or siloing within our own company, where the digital marketers were going, oh, that's the Morphio team. And the Morphio team was like, oh, that's the digital marketers. And we're like, we're trying to build this product for you. Let's, bring it together. So that was the first lesson we learned, was we couldn't, isolate that sort of product development. And that often happens, right? You get these internal projects and you say, okay, so-and-so is going to go build it. They'll be the team and they'll go do that. And that just didn't work, because we didn't have the user feedback. Then the sort of next evolution was pointing or sort of agreeing on who those liaisons would be, if you will. That gained good traction, because then you had the feedback loop. Every week, every 2 weeks, there was hey, we're thinking about building this, and there was a good bridge there. I think the final lesson we kind of learned along the way too is to make sure people know just how experimental and innovative what you're doing is in any sort of those internal projects, and understanding the why. What we had was a product that evolved, morphed a few times to say, okay, we started it out as a development platform. Then we started out as an SEO thing, and we moved this, kind of moving target of what this product was to help people. And so you had digital marketers and team members getting confused themselves on what is this product, what are we trying to get out of it, and treating those internal projects as, this is a moving target. We're building this together. Let's view it as a joint project, and also let's make sure we set expectations that it's not going to be perfect. There's going to be wrinkles, and the team, expected perfect. Like they were like, oh, well, why doesn't it do this? And why doesn't it do that? It's like, no, we're building this for you, and like, give us your feedback and then we'll figure it out. So just getting over that initial, like, this isn't going to be the quality of a $3,000, $5,000 a month product that you're using right now, right? And we're building it from scratch. So setting the expectations of innovation and what that risk and reward is with the team is also very important. And that was one lesson we learned after a few years.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think that one thing that I've heard coming up with, whenever you're introducing anything with the word AI in it or new technology, is people get scared that they're going to be replaced by the robots. So did you come up against that? And if so, how did you deal with that?
Yeah, great. Yeah. It's like you were there, Dan. I tell you, you're hitting all the right points. So on that one, where we had to go with it was essentially making our purpose statement as a product. The notion of our purpose as a business is to make marketers empowered, happy, and effective. And so the goal there, and when we break that down into different pieces, is empowered by giving them the data they need to make informed decisions. We want them to be happy because they have time to strategize and the information they need to strategize, and effective, meaning they can create results for their clients. And that became part of our product mission is, and you look at AI and what that means, we actually don't, in our platform, have any black box automation. There isn't a notion of connect your platforms and we'll do the work. Right? We're not pushing changes. We're not making the adjustments in the campaigns for marketers, because we fundamentally believe as agency people that the value proposition is using and layering in strategic thinking with the data to make the right decisions. The machine doesn't have all the inputs and all the context of where is a business in its life cycle, looking at what the goals of the individual campaigns are. All of that nuance that needs to come out is really important. So for us, what we really had to do, because even internally, the notion was, oh, well, is this just meant to be a machine that means we don't hire as many people? Or is it a machine that is meaning some of us are going to get laid off? And the answer was no. What we're trying to do is make you more valuable to the agency so that we can build out strategic thinking and so that we can have better organic growth on our clients and not have you making micro adjustments to campaigns that, somebody outsourced or offshore could do for a fraction of the cost.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. And this is probably a question I should have asked earlier, but can you go over a little bit more about what Morphio is actually doing? And then specifically, like what AI means to you? Like because that's a word that I think gets thrown around a lot. And I think it helps to define it. Yeah.
That's right. Good question. So Morphio, in essence, is meant to, as I said, provide proactive insights, protect marketers from manual mistakes. And what I mean by that is, some of the stories I have as running the agency is a daily budget gets entered by somebody incorrectly. And for 2 or 3 days, you're spending $10,000 instead of $1,000. That's a problem. You look at those sorts of mistakes that cost real dollars and also relationships for agencies. When on volume, you think of, we did the math to say, if you're an agency that has 30 clients, we had 40 on retainer at ours, you have maybe 20 campaigns running on average in each of those accounts. You're making changes to those campaigns, say once a month. You're looking at, 10,000-ish changes a year being made by people, let alone the machine learning that the platforms are pushing as well. So, you have all this manual work being done, landing pages connected, campaigns turning on and off. Us monitoring that in the background and looking at your results for trends and anomalies in your data, or variances in your data, alerting the marketer to what is happening so that they can make informed decisions on what needs to get done. That's what Morphio does. It's meant to be, here are the insights, here's the data, here's what the machine learning is seeing as odd. Let's give you some suggestions, and then you make the strategic decisions on what to do.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. And if there's a small tweak across that many campaigns, the amount of leverage is huge. So the value prop is clear. I guess to just kind of zoom back into your story and kind of slot back into that. So, you're building this product. It's evolving, kind of working through all the issues with software, which are many, because the reason I think software is kind of like a black belt product is you have to build so much of it before you know if it's going to work or not. It's not like testing an ad or something. So good on you for that. And from there, kind of moving into the acquisition, can you talk about that a little bit? Like, how did that process start? How did you juggle those two things at once, like building a product and getting towards being acquired and all that stuff?
Yeah, very interesting. Our ownership group made a very conscious decision that they never wanted the agency to be dependent on them as individuals. And this is just a reality of agency ownership, is there becomes a point in time where you need to decide what you want the agency to be and what the outcome you want is. And that can change over time. And evaluating that on an annual basis is something our ownership group did with the leadership team, annually going offsite, disconnecting. For our owners, it was going up to a cottage in Northern Ontario and sitting around a campfire and thinking about life, basically, and saying, what do we want to do here? Group, friends, what are we doing? And I think the agency decision that always has to be made is this a lifestyle business? Are we happy being, a 10, 20 person agency that's really good at what we do? We love our clients. And if I make good money every year and that's my goal, that's great. Like that's a great way to live, and that's a great way to have a career and ownership of an agency. Our owners decided that what they wanted to do was to push and disrupt a bit more in terms of being a challenger to the conglomerates, in the sense of, we are now going to be bigger and better and take those businesses that want to see performance in their results, and that would usually have traditionally been a small fish in a big pond, and they can come be a big fish in our agency. So we had, multinational companies, US companies coming into Canada as our clients because we understood the Canadian market. And so, for us, the decision was made, let's grow, let's scale. And as part of that, the owners knew, they said, we can't be attached to the agency forever, nor do we want to be. And so that's how I ended up in the COO role. We also had a non-owner move into the CEO role to say, this is now being independently run. There is now an ownership group and a board, but the day-to-day relationships of clients and the dependency on the owners to operate the business was gone.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that whether people want a lifestyle business or they want to continue to grow through an acquisition or something, some other version of that, I think the how kind of creates a lot of hand wringing, right? So, what did it take to do that for your owners to get things off their plates? Like another way to phrase that question is, in that year kind of leading up to the acquisition, are there things that you wish you had known or did before getting into it to get ready for it?
Yeah, I think for us, if we had known the acquisition was coming, I think, or if we had more, kind of foresight to it, one of the ones was, the product build as well, right? Like, the product build was expensive and a time suck. We were obviously doing that to the end goal of making it its own product in the end, or making the business itself more valuable. And it did. But what was just interesting to see or learn was, the focus that we put on it, how or if we had spun it out earlier, or if we had either pushed the integration more and the product development faster and sold it together. Those are two interesting discussions of like what if or lessons learned there was around the product. And it was kind of this in between of, is it part of the agency? Do we sell it with the agency? Does it add enough value to the sale that it makes it worth it? We poured good amount of money into building it. Should that have been separated out earlier, separated earlier? And that's one thing we had done a pretty good job of. But I think, if you are in that mindset of, I want to exit this in the next 2 to 3 years, our owners did a great job of handing over management to us. I think another one would have been cleaning up and leaning up our P&L to prepare for that, to get a higher EBITDA and a higher multiple. Some of those costs that you think of as investments for the future, could have provided a better return on the sale. So that's just something candidly that I think people need to think about is you can't decide in 6 months you're going to sell an agency and maximize its value. You need to plan that. And I saw, and I'm going on a tangent, but we also made our own acquisitions as our agency. We made 2 acquisitions of our own and looked at a few others. And one of them was a fantastic example where you could tell the individual was prepared for sale, where he ran that company so lean that the EBITDA percentage was really high, and in some ways ultimately unsustainable for us if we had acquired them. But just the notion of, really scrutinize and look at what you're investing in. And if it's an investment that's not going to return you money for 2-3 years, or as part of your lifestyle business and you're running things through the company that are personal in nature, taxes, accounting aside, I'm not giving accounting advice on this call. But that sort of leading up to get your best value is important, and it has to start.
Yeah, I think that's really useful. And to kind of bring it to our business, I think about this a lot because we're, in the process of developing ancillary products, so maybe it's courses or data or other things that are essentially like lower cost, but more scalable and go out to a bigger audience and that sort of thing. And one quote that I love, I forgot who said it, is, basically the lower price to product is the more marketing investment you have to make to support it. So for us here at Sales Schema, it's really like the service is like the fuel to do everything else. The big stuff is the fuel to do the little stuff that scales. So I'd love to put that back at you and just see how much you agree or disagree and how closely that's mapped with your experience.
Yeah, I think it is fairly closely mapped, and I would agree with that notion completely. And what we're at, even in terms of Morphio, is from a product market fit and from a pricing standpoint, what do you need to do in order to add value and justify cost? And that's an interesting conversation too, right? As we're kind of trading quotes, one person told me, your profit's in the pricing, right? Like your cost is your cost, and how you look at the product needs to be examined as what is the value and what is somebody willing to pay for what you get. And maybe that's below your cost. That's a bad problem to have, but you have to look at, that lever of what is this worth to somebody. And to your point on marketing and investment, yes, that's been our experience as well, in terms of needing to lead with advertising and investing in that sort of considerations and partnerships and all of that. And you have to do more of it if you're at an SMB type market.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. And to bring this more to the present, I'd love to just learn about, what are you working on now? Like, what are the biggest challenges that you're up against working on, more of a digital product compared to an agency sort of model?
Yeah, I think on the product side, the feedback loop between product and sales is always an interesting discussion, right? Who leads product roadmap, and how do you determine what gets on there? At an agency, it's very simple. You have your scope of work, or you kind of ideate and say, hey, client, here's the pitch. Do you want this? And then they say yes or no. And then they pay you for it. In the product side, you're basically making a bet every day that what you're building is going to provide a return or add value to the product in a way that, balances or validates building that component or that feature, right? So having to view that as an interesting bet and a trade-off or investment up front is way more of a mental shift for you. So for us, where that is interesting is how do you get user feedback, not just on a one-to-one basis, right? The conversations are great, and hearing that anecdotally from power users is important, but how do you get the market intelligence and the research and the macro level understanding of where your market sits in order to understand what gaps there are and where and how you can make a product that adds the most value, in the fastest time possible. Yeah. That part is very tricky. And being in, frankly, a saturated market as well, right? Like there's tons of marketing tools. How do you differentiate? So that's sort of our biggest shift in terms of going to a product.
Yeah, and that brings up an interesting point that I think also creates a lot of hand wringing for our listeners and for every agency out there is specialization. Hey, we've had success here, we've had success there, we've done all these different things. What's hot right now? What are people buying? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Like how are you thinking about specialization these days? Are you niching down more? Are you going broader? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I'll split that into two. One being on the agency side from sort of that consultant lens I have now on the agency side, and then product after that. So from an agency perspective, what I think we're seeing is what we call the need for bricks and mortar people. The ratio of those is dependent on how much you want to specialize, but repeatability in your services is what creates efficiency and creates that bottom line growth. And that's what we found most importantly was we were selling as our agency when we were growing, but not efficiently, is we were taking on almost any type of project. At one point, we were also taking, app builds and development and custom projects and all of that. And what we learned is, unless that's all you do and you charge a premium for it and know how to scope those projects, you're not going to make money there. You need to create something that is repeatable, and that when you do it for one client, the lessons and the efficiencies can be applied to the second, third, fourth. And so that's where I think the lean towards specialization is valuable from creating an efficiency standpoint, and also from a target audience and marketing perspective. If you get really good at, I've talked to agencies that all they do is HVAC clients, right? Like who'd have thought, right? But it's that niche mentality of, I know how to do digital marketing for HVAC. And whether it's in Virginia, whether it's in Toronto, the same general principles apply. And so that's where you just have to decide what specialization approach you're taking, if it's a niche target, if you will, or within a specific scope of services. But that specialization is what creates your repeatability. You just need enough generalists in order to translate and understand the business needs back into those specialists. But overall, that's my take on it. Just as a kind of initial thought on the agency side. On the product side, what I'm seeing as well is a need to continually go deeper with feature sets. And what I mean by that is, our tool, as I said, evolved over time. So we have features that are SEO based features with keyword suggestions and competitor tracking and all this sort of SEO set of tools. We also have, auditing tools for budgets and PPC, and we also have budget monitoring for PPC and report. Like it has all this different stuff. And what we've realized is there are, that typical 80-20 rule, right? Like 20% of our features get used 80% of the time, and it's not quite that drastic, but you get my point. And so we're now really focusing in on, okay, these are the core features that everybody has agreed are their use case. Let's continue to evolve those deeper and give more insights, more integration with our other core features, and make that more deep in understanding. So rather than being, our tool does 7 things in one, it's like, no, here's our lane, and we're just going to get really, really good at it.
Yeah, that's great, and that maps pretty squarely with what we've seen, and reminds me of that. I think it's a Seth Godin quote where it's don't find people for your products, find products for your people. And it's hard for me to envision branching out too much further and making everything continue to work. So that's super interesting. With that, Dave, kind of getting to the end of the time, I'd love to just learn, what are you guys focusing on now? How can people follow what you're up to and so on?
Yeah, great question. So what's next for us is really focusing on two things. One is, as I said, the integration of our features and giving, the most robust suggestions and insights that we can, and how do those all interconnect. So looking at, to make it a little more specific, if we have budget auditing suggestions on, hey, here's how you can change budgets within each campaign, that's all good. We also have a budget monitoring tool that is monitoring your pacing against your budgeted spends on particular campaigns, et cetera. How or where do we bring those two pieces together to create kind of the ultimate synergies? We're also going down a path of being more, I'd say, multi-account focused. So we've just rolled out a new feature where it's a portfolio overview. So for agencies, you have 20 clients. How do you see in one spot how 20 different clients are doing? Right? Like, that's half the battle for an agency accounts person, is on any given day, which one of my accounts is on fire? Where do I need the team to focus? And where can we let the foot off the pedal a little bit because performance is really good? Ebbing and flowing service levels and prioritization. That's a huge focus for us as well in terms of workflow management. More broadly, there's also integration requests. We're seeing the proliferation of platforms coming through in terms of, we started as Google, Facebook. We're seeing more and more movement and diversification to TikTok, to Snapchat, Pinterest. So, those integrations are going to be more valuable for us as we build them out. So that's sort of what's on the roadmap for us. In terms of where to follow, what's going on, we're constantly putting out thought leadership. We're currently doing a blog series on agency growth. So covering a lot of the topics we talked about today: how to build sustainable finance models, how to create organic growth with your client portfolio. And that's all being posted right now on our Morphio LinkedIn. So you can search Morphio as a company on LinkedIn and follow us there, or myself, Dave Bunce, at Morphio. So that's the way to go.
Awesome, Dave. And we'll make sure to get all that stuff linked up. And I'm sure we could do another mini episode on these new platforms and how the product is evolving and everything. So hopefully we will. Thanks so much for your time, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, great chatting with you, Dan. Thanks for having me.